Welcome to the Freebirth podcast, a supportive space for people who are learning, exploring, and celebrating their autonomous choices in childbirth. Together, we'll unpack truths, share personal stories, and claim our ability to birth freely and intuitively. Here's your host, Emily Saldea.
Hey everyone, it's Emily and Yolanda.
Hey!
We want to tell you about our amazing new course because we just launched our pre-sale.
That's right. I'm Yolanda, the director of the Freebirth Society School, and I'm thrilled to tell you about the very first course we're offering, Freebirth Society's Complete Guide to Freebirth. If you're interested in birthing outside the system, but you don't know where to start, or you're encountering resistance or fear in your own mind or in your community, or even if you just want to make sure you have all your ducks in a row, this course is for you.
Freebirth Society's Complete Guide to Freebirth really is incredibly comprehensive. We cover everything from how to talk to friends and family, how to navigate your choices with a nervous partner, how to get a birth certificate, what prenatal care could look like when no one else is managing you, how to identify real complications and emergencies, and let's get real. We go deep into unlearning the myths about birth in our culture using evidence-based information to relearn what normal birth is and how to prepare for it.
Our intention is for every course participant to emerge with the tools to approach their free birth with confidence and the knowledge to discern what safe physiological birth looks like, and in possession of the power to manifest the birth of your dreams.
What's also really cool is that we offer long-term support, live group coaching, options for one-on-one coaching, and you will get lifetime access to the course material.
We even have quizzes and worksheets, meditations, hypno-affirmation tracks, and all sorts of unique and helpful custom-tailored birth prep for your free birth.
This course is for the woman who wants to birth in power on her own terms. We have created this course especially for you because you're standing in the very place Yolanda and I both were when we recognized that hospital birth or any form of birth in captivity just wasn't our path.
So head over to our gorgeous new website, freebirthsociety.com, to learn more and to sign up for the course that will quite literally change your life.
I'm excited to share with you today a truly joyful and fun story. We are joined by the wise, intuitive, and oh so lovely Alexandra from the mountains of Northern California. She tells us about her idyllic first birth off the grid in her yurt in the mountains, snowed in with just her partner and her wolf dog Avalon, which wound up playing quite the role in her birth. Alexandra shares how both she and her partner used plant medicine to flow with the power of birth and tells us all about her placenta tacos. Lastly, we have a great conversation about how to learn to trust ourselves and heighten our intuition through honoring our own boundaries.
So it really started when I was a young child. And I decided that I was never going to have children because I was so scared of giving birth. I just always told my mom, like, I don't want to have to feel so much pain. I don't want to have like doctors around me. It just sounds terrible. I would rather not have kids and just enjoy my life. But then I would have thoughts of like being like Pocahontas or something, and how maybe if I, was like living on the land or something, and no one was there to bother me, maybe then I could have children.
Wow.
So I think somewhere within me, I always had the awareness that there was another way. But I had never heard any of these stories or had it modeled for me or, seen examples of empowered birth. So I was just like, no, fully shut off. So when I was 19, I had been living in LA modeling and acting and had like a really spontaneous awakening, I guess you can say, just to the fact that there was more to life and more to who I was and what I wanted to do in this life. So I left LA and traveled for a while and ended up living on a permaculture farm in Ojai in Southern California, where I met two mothers who had free births. And one of them told me like, oh yeah, I gave birth alone with my partner in that yurt and that I was living in. And to me, that just shattered like everything I had ever known. Like, wait, what? That's possible? That's an option? Like, how did that work? I had infinite questions just like flooding through me. And yeah, so that was a huge turning point for me. My mind was completely blown, and I started hearing things about like breastfeeding and co-sleeping and, holding your baby when they cry and not using pacifiers, just things that I had never been exposed to. So I'm super grateful to have been exposed to a little bit of just a different way before I actually became pregnant. So I found out a couple years later, after the time on the farm in Ojai, when I was first exposed to Freebirth and, conscious mothering and all that, I found out I was unexpectedly pregnant.
Oh, wow.
And with someone I had just met. We were only together for about 2.5 months. And it was like a really ungrounded relationship. Wow. We were traveling and just kind of, connecting as like young, free people. And I became pregnant. And right away, the fear came up, and the thought of free birth entered my mind because I had been exposed to it. But then, the fears were kind of like just still present. So I thought, okay, maybe with my second child, maybe for my first one, like I'll have a midwife, and then for a future child, I can do a free birth. So I put it off for a few months, thinking like, who knows if I'm even going to stay pregnant, like maybe I'll miscarry if this isn't meant to be. I just kind of denied it, didn't tell anyone, just avoided the thoughts of having to come up with a plan because of the fears. So at about 3 months pregnant, I finally decided to find a midwife. So I met with a midwife once and was like, okay, this could work. So we met 3 times total, and it always felt unnecessary to me. I always left feeling like, okay, like I could have just talked with a friend about all of that. It didn't really feel very helpful. And then she started saying things like, I think you're overly confident. A lot of things could go wrong, and labor can be really long and difficult, especially with a first baby. So I would leave our appointments feeling more stressed and more dependent on her. So kind of a theme throughout my pregnancy was like, where are we going to live? Because we had been traveling and really ungrounded. And one day when I was around 6 months pregnant, I had this really clear image come to me of giving birth in a yurt in the forest, alone with my partner and our dog. And, it kind of like reawakened that thought that I had as a young girl that I shared about before of like, maybe I could do it by myself, or, not have anyone there disturbing me or making it more difficult than it has to be. And I thought back to the women I had met on the farm in Ojai, and just knowing that someone had done it, had given birth in a yurt on their own, was enough for me to feel like it was at least an option.
It's huge. One story can change the whole paradigm for us. So many women I've interviewed have said that there was one woman who said, hey, there is another way. And that was the path. And so I'm also appreciating that in your story, your fear is not about birth itself. It's about the paradigm that you had been seeing that was so disruptive and scary and emergency ridden. It doesn't sound like that the actual birthing process or what you knew birth could be was the scariest part for you.
Yeah, that's totally true. I mean, I was scared of like having an IV put in my arm. Sure. I wasn't actually scared of like the baby coming out. I was scared of like other people being there and interrupting my flow or stressing me out. And I'm a really sensitive person, and especially in pregnancy, all women are super sensitive and vulnerable. So yeah, that was my big concern, is like, I don't want other people checking me or bothering me. So I had this image, back to the image of being in the yurt on the mountain, and I just kind of ran with it. I told my partner, like, we have to do this. Let's move to a mountain and put up a yurt and just do it and go for it. And thankfully he's a pretty radical and open person. So he was like, okay, let's do this. So we moved from Sonoma County to Nevada City, California, and bought a piece of raw land. Lived in a military tent for a month.
Whoa.
And then, that was awesome. I was just like outside every day, spending a lot of time with myself, with the earth. reading, meditating, just really protecting myself from all the things out there that can mess with us and scare us. And that was a big piece of my preparation, was like being with the land, being present, not getting in my head, just chilling out and, protecting myself, even from family and friends. And that was hard for a little while. My family members were really hurt and upset with me for, not flying down to visit or, updating them on like my midwife appointments. So we'll get back to that now, the midwife situation. So right when we moved to the land, the midwife called me and left me a voicemail where she was like kind of in tears and just really distraught, saying that she was concerned with how far we had moved from the nearest hospital.
Oh, whoa. So, she was in tears?
She was like a wreck.
Whoa, that's professional.
So that right there was a big red flag for me.
Yeah, of course.
And she just said, you're over 2 hours away from the nearest hospital. It's going to be snowing when you give birth. And it just doesn't feel like a safe situation to me. And right away, right when I heard her voice on the voicemail, I looked at my partner and I was like, she's not going to be there. Absolutely not. Yeah. And trusting in that initial feeling was huge for me. Just like right away, I felt a no, this woman's not supposed to be there. So I called her back and was just super firm. Like, this is not going to work. I'm not, she tried to convince me to find a birthing center in town or rent a place closer to a hospital. And part of me was secretly so happy, like, great, now I don't have to have anyone there. And I get to have the birth I always dreamed of. So I just told her, no problem. It sounds like it's not going to work. Thank you for everything. And that was it.
Wow.
So she was like, I can refer you to some midwives in your area. And I just, deleted the email and never responded. And that was it. So my partner asked me, okay, what do you want to do? And, whatever you want to do, I trust you. And I have to give him some credit there for just really granting me sovereignty in terms of not projecting like fear or what he thought was best. He just really empowered me and was like, whatever you want to do, however you want to do this, I'm here to support you.
Which should literally be bare minimum.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
That should be a given with every relationship, from the non-birthing person to the birthing person.
Yes. Yeah, sovereignty. It's like the very basic thing. So I told him I want to have a free birth, and that's the only thing that sounds good to me. So he was like, okay, let's do this. Whatever you need, I'm here to support. So I got some books.
You're like, I need a yurt. I need a sheepskin. I need a big fire.
I need plenty of firewood, spring water, a bathtub, just a few basics. So then my family members started reaching out like, hey, what's going on? Are you going to find a new midwife? What are you going to do? And part of me felt pressured to kind of like make something up. But another part of me realized I'm not doing anything wrong. Like this is totally safe and natural and normal. And this is what I'm doing. So I shared with just 3 family members that I was planning to have, I said unassisted birth without a professional or anyone there. And the reaction was stress and fear, and some fierce mama, like lioness energy came through me and just said, if you are going to project your fear onto me, I'm not going to talk to you again until the baby is born. And that's the end of it. So if you want to be in my life right now, the best thing you can do is just pray for me, tell me you love me, support me, visualize everything going smoothly. And that's it. So, and thankfully they were honoring of that. At one point, my grandma started having a lot of fear and said, she kind of like made a little deal with me. She said, okay, I promise to not send any fears or worries out into the universe if you can just have somebody confirm the position of the baby, like just confirm that he's head down. So I was like, okay, I can do that. So I found a midwife in town and I had already been feeling like I could feel he was head down, but I felt like for my grandma, like bless her heart, she was so scared. I just thought for her sake, I'll have someone just confirm.
What if it had been head up? Would you have just been head down?
Probably.
Yeah.
I had done research on the whole breech subject, because that was one of my only fears, is like, what if I have a breech baby? Am I still going to have a free birth? And I really felt just so clearly that this was how I was going to give birth. There wasn't any doubt in my mind.
Yeah.
And that might sound to some people like naive or irresponsible or overly confident, but something in me just knew that everything was going to be okay.
Yeah. Same with me.
Yeah. So I trusted that. And I did have someone confirm he was head down, and, she tried talking me out of having an unassisted birth. I just left her off it, paid her $100, left her office, and called my grandma and said, okay, he's head down. Everything's good. And then just went inward for the next 2 weeks. I was 37 weeks at that point, according to the whole date that the midwife had given me. Mm-hmm. And the conception date, which I knew when that was. And then, I just went inward and connected with the land. I had spent, kind of on a side note, but still totally related, the last several years of my life, a topic of huge interest has been the intelligence of the natural world and the intelligence of plants. And during my pregnancy, I was especially sensitive to the intelligence of the plant world, and was living on a raw piece of land, so had a lot of beautiful opportunities to connect with the earth and with the trees that were surrounding the yurt where I was planning to give birth, and with the birds that lived in those trees, and just with the unseen realms that so often don't get credit. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the reasons I don't like the word unassisted birth, because I felt extremely assisted by the beings present on that land, seen and unseen, and just really learned how to open myself up to receiving the greater assistance from the natural world.
And unassisted originally came as a legal term for birth certificates when they were unassisted from providers. So it's actually a systemic word. So we don't have to perpetuate that terminology, because it really was actually within the system a terminology to use when an accidental birth occurred without a provider. So it's irrelevant to totally our experience.
Yeah. So, so I was connecting with the land and just being with myself, meditating, praying, singing songs, thankfully I had the privilege to just be still and live slowly and be present. I didn't have to, go to work or anything. So I was super grateful for that. And so I guess now we'll get to the birth. Sure, so when I was, at 39 weeks I was alone on the land. My partner had gone to town to get some groceries. And at this point, we were pretty much snowed in. There was just multiple feet of snow. No cars could get in or out.
Oh my God.
He had a snow truck, so he was able to deflate the tires and kind of float above the snow.
Whoa.
And it was a 2.5 hour drive.
Where are you in California?
Yeah, we were in Nevada City, which is just outside of Grass Valley. But we were up on a mountain, on this, what they call the ridge, just above town, on a 9-mile dirt road that's really bumpy and not maintained by the county or anything. And one thing I really love about this location is that all the neighbors, all the people who live up there, leave for the winter. So it was truly just us and one neighbor 10 miles away.
Because what month is this?
This is end of December, beginning of January.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and I liked that. I liked knowing there's no chance of any neighbor coming over to need, ask for something. Again, my big fear was somebody interrupting me or talking to me or hearing me. So, I loved the fact that we were snowed in.
And I feel like I have to ask, so how did you feel or reconcile or navigate, the reality of being snowed in, having a wild birth? How did that feel for you? Just, the reality of being snowed in and all of that. How did you feel?
Yeah, if something did go wrong or, that's a great question. So I thought about okay, on a realistic ground level, what if my baby dies, or what if something happens? And I thought to myself, if something does go differently than I'm expecting or hoping, would I rather that happen in a hospital setting where people potentially rush my baby away from me or, come in with this emergency plan or whatever, or would I rather allow nature to take its course and and it's kind of a delicate, sensitive subject because I have some close friends whose babies were saved by like the medical system. And, but something in me was like, my personal path right now is to fully trust in nature's plan ultimately. And like, if my baby if something's going to happen, I would rather have it happen up here in nature where we can like be with the earth and have a sacred experience around whatever happens.
Mm-hmm. I completely agree. And that was the same thing my same journey, and many free birther journeys. I mean, how can you not contend with the possibility of death? And it does, for me, and it sounds like for you, require a really just profound willingness to be wild and be at the what's the right word, response of what nature intends, and it's I mean, I say it all the time that I trust in my biology, and I think that many people may find that irresponsible, but I think that's like hilarious, because like, how the hell did we get here?
Right.
Why would we, like, hasn't biology proved itself enough?
Yeah. And that was an anchor for me throughout the pregnancy and the birth, and even now in motherhood. My anchor is knowing that this is not some new age hippie thing that I'm doing. This is the original way. Like, we came from the earth. All of the original births, most of the births ever in humanity, like up to date, happened in a wild, sovereign way. And yes, sometimes things went differently than the mothers had hoped, or, things happened. But I feel like, in general, like, birth is very safe and normal and natural. And we've been doing this for a very long time. So remembering that there was this web of like all the ancient women who have already done this before me was so encouraging for me to know that I could call upon their energetic support. And just remembering, like, I'm not doing some new crazy thing. This is totally ancient and normal. And something in me felt a feeling of remembrance. Like, every decision I've ever made in terms of specifically motherhood, but even just in all areas of my life, I feel like when we make the decision that the ancient, like, woman in us remembers, it activates some cellular memory of like, yes, this is natural. This is how we evolved to live. And for me, I'm able to relax into that.
Totally. It's beautiful. I mean, we've literally never not been birthing.
Right.
Like, there was never a point where it like came along,
Exactly.
It's I totally hear you. So, okay. So take me to the birth.
Okay.
You're snowed in, your man's getting groceries or something.
Yeah. And, I went outside just to go pee. So we didn't even have a bathroom. We were in a yurt. Like, we had running water and a water heater, but, no bathroom or kitchen. So I went outside to go pee, and, in my underwear, there was like some like goo. It was like a gooey situation. And I thought, oh, maybe that's my mucus plug. But it wasn't bloody, so I wasn't totally sure. And I went back inside and was like, okay, I'll just, flow with it. Maybe it was a mucus plug, maybe not. We'll see. And a few hours later, my partner got home, and I told him about it. And he let me know that our neighbor was going to be delivering our bathtub that evening, because I felt like the baby was going to be born in the next week or two. And I wanted to have a bathtub available to me, not to birth in. I never saw myself birthing in a tub, but I felt like it would be soothing to be able to soak if I wanted to in labor. So that evening I had so much energy, and that's kind of like a typical thing to hear. I was just playing music and organizing and doing stuff and like coloring. And that evening, our neighbor, the one neighbor who lived 10 miles away, arrived in his truck and delivered our bathtub. And he looked at me and was like, wow, you are giving birth tonight. And I was like, I don't know. I feel really good. Maybe not for a few more days.
Did he have kids? Why did he have that intuition?
He has 3 kids.
Okay.
He said to me, like, I've seen mothers who are about to give birth he's like, you're the most beautiful I've ever seen you in your life. Like, you're glowing, you're just emanating this maternal like glow and joy. And you're giving birth tonight. So have a great time. And like,
here's your bathtub.
Here's your bathtub. And he put a hose into it. He's like, you have one bath, because we didn't, install the drain or anything. And he's like, if you need me, I'll be 10 miles up the road. And I was like, I'm not going to need you, but thanks. And
what would you need him for?
Yeah, totally. I was like, just go. And so he left, and about 5 minutes after he was fully gone, like down the dirt road, I started having cramps in my lower back. And something in me got really giddy and bubbly and excited. Like, oh my gosh, is this, is that a contraction? It kind of felt like a menstrual cramp. What's going on? And so I started writing in my journal about how excited I was, and just started riding this wave of like bliss and just excitement. And just so in such a pure way, like there was no limiting thought in my field, just full presence and joy. The cramps in my lower back continued and started intensifying. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to honor this as a contraction, and let me just like time it to see, so I pulled out my phone, and they were happening. They were like over a minute long and under 3 minutes apart. And after, timing them for just like a few minutes, I put my phone away and was like, okay, this is probably happening. So, I turned off my phone completely, and we turned off the generator and just lit a bunch of candles and entered like a very ceremonial space of just presence and prayer and, and just connection with the moment. So, at that point, I had an urge to smoke some cannabis, and it just sounded really good to me. So I did. I smoked a little bit and made some yummy snacks and just started playing some music. And the next few hours were spent moving a lot. I could not sit still. I would like go from being at the altar to playing music to going on a naked walk in the snow to curling up by the fire and just moving all around, and just so much movement. Just like trying to get comfortable. But if I sat still, I wasn't comfortable. So just kind of flowing with it. And at one point I got in the bathtub and just soaked. And this was the one point of stillness, was like just sitting in the bathtub alone. I told my partner, go be on the other side of the yurt. I just want to be by myself. And that's the best way you can support me. And he was like, do you want a foot massage? Do you want
I love
a back
the
massage?
Like being banished to a corner of a yurt too. Yeah. It's like not that many places to hide.
Right. Yeah. And I didn't want to send him into the snow. You know? So I was
that's
like,
nice
just
of you.
go sit over there and like, don't look at me and don't talk to me. And I'll let you know if I need anything. Thank you. So he went over to his side of the yurt, and I just soaked in the bath, and it hit me like, this is happening. I'm becoming a mother, and this is probably my last bath alone. Like, oh my God, this is huge. And there was so much emotion that came up of just really being present with what was happening in my own way. Like no one was there to tell me what was happening. I was able to just feel it for what it was.
And therefore able to feel it even more.
Exactly. Yeah. So I was in the bath for however long. I really removed all the linear time, like stuff. There was no clock or, TV or like phone or computer. So I was just
You didn't have Fox News on. You're like, no, Fox News was on, obviously.
Or like Facebook open or anything. So I don't know like the timing of all of this.
Sure.
I just know it was about 7 p.m. when I started having the cramps in my lower back. So anyway, I got out of the bathtub just feeling the most beautiful I ever have in my life. Like, oh my God, I'm becoming a mother. This is amazing. And just feeling so confident and free. Like I knew that whatever I wanted to do in that moment, I could do. If I wanted to just be naked, I could. If I wanted to dance or drum, I could. And that feeling of sovereignty really fueled me to just like tune in every moment to what sounded good. Because there was no one even suggesting anything. I was able to fully listen to what I needed in each moment, which changed literally every moment. So after the bath, I got out and I was calmer, but the energy was very primally intense still, like full power, going in one direction, like things were not slowing down. And my breasts started shooting colostrum out, like literally 3 feet across, like in front of me.
Oh my God.
And my dog, Avalon, who's half wolf, so I called her my midwolf, ran over and started licking my nipples and like drinking the colostrum while also instinctually assisting me in labor, because nipple stimulation really helps to, progress things. So
what
she's
did
licking.
You do? Were you like, get away from it, or were you?
No, I started cracking up and giggling, which also helps labor progress, laughter. And her and I mean, we've had like deep plant medicine journeys together and lived in the woods together and gone on amazing journeys. So it wasn't that, weird for us to continue our journey together in this really primal, amazing, unique way.
That's awesome.
So she's licking my nipples. She's howling as I'm like producing these super primal sounds and helping me to just like come deeper into the bliss and the primal experience of it. So that was a really beautiful, like key moment that I'll always remember.
I'm just like picturing, first of all, it is a shame you did not have a tripod set up with a little, what is it called?
That's my
GoPro.
one regret. When people ask me, is there anything you would change about your birth? Like, would you have a doula? Would you have herbs there? Like, what would you do? I just say I would have recorded it, because it's this, when I tell the story, I just feel like, having the image to go with it I'll kind of describe it. She's a white husky wolf with piercing blue eyes who's like super joyful and awesome.
Well, that's exactly, it's almost maybe better that it's just in our head. It's like in this yurt, in the snow, with a wolf
with candles.
Your nipples.
Yeah.
And I love like picturing just your partner being like, maybe he's like crocheting a scarf in the corner.
So he actually had some wachuma, some San Pedro cactus medicine that he made into a tea. And the reason for this, plant medicines are a big part of our life and a big part of our relationship. We met in a like shamanic plant medicine ceremony. So that's been a strong foundation for us, is the power of communing with the plants. And I really believe that it assisted him in going into a deeply intuitive state and knowing how to support me, because he was, had the presence of this plant with him, like kind of guiding him on what to do and how to hold the space in a really sacred way.
Cool.
So he was, during the wolf licking my nipples part, I think he was like over on the couch or something.
He didn't miss it, did he?
No, he saw. He was like, oh my God, this is epic.
He was like, this is birth, huh?
Yeah. Oh my God. And what a healing for him that must have been. I mean.
And the wolf.
Right. For all of us, for all of creation in that moment.
So good. Okay.
So then pretty soon after getting out of the tub, there was a shift. Like all of a sudden it was really full power. And I started actually experiencing some physical discomfort in my hips. Was like, whoa, how is this possible for the human body to feel this way? Like, holy God, and just was like, okay, I have to move my body, and was starting to make some really primal sounds and felt very primal and ancient, this new energy coming through me that I probably would not have felt safe to go into had anyone else been there. And that's like a huge key right there. If I ever have other children, like 100% I will have a free birth, because I know that in order to go into that super primal state of being, I had to feel completely comfortable to yell, to sing, to poop, to be naked, to dance, whatever, And so thankfully I had that, and my partner really respected my space, but also like brought me water with a straw and reminded me to, that he was there if I needed anything. And it was very simple, his way of supporting, and that was perfect. So then all of a sudden I felt like the baby was coming. There was just this knowing of like, oh my God, it's happening. And this pressure on my pelvic floor. And one of the things I told my partner leading up to the birth was, if it seems like I'm starting to push, like remind me not to push. Because I had read about how one of the issues with modern birth is like the encouragement to push before it's actually time, and how that can create a lot of stress in the body and, tire the mother out. So I told him, he's coming, the baby's coming. And he was like, "Are you sure? Remember, don't push if your body's not doing it on its own." That was his one piece of advice, and it was very helpful. Yeah. And I was like, "No, I'm not even pushing. My body's like, he's coming. Get me some coconut oil and the mirror." And so I had a little corner set up with things for him to bring me when I told him it was time. And in that corner was a labor tincture, a handheld mirror, and coconut oil. So I just lathered on a bunch of coconut oil and squatted over a small handheld mirror. And he just, his head started coming out. And at this point, all the intensity that I was describing of moving around and feeling discomfort and, just the high energy, like, paused. And everything was so still and silent and focused and real in a way I had never experienced in my life, of just like full presence, no thought, no emotion, just like primal being. And so I was squatting over the mirror, and his head started emerging, and there was zero pain. I had heard of like the ring of fire, none of that, not just like total ease. And his head coming out, and in the mirror, I could see that it was like kind of bluish purple, which for a moment freaked me out because I was expecting like a cute little pink head.
Sure.
So I paused, and I should also mention, I had not watched any birth videos in my pregnancy or been to any births. I don't know why. I think part of me just wanted to protect myself from potentially seeing something that could like limit or influence me in any way. I just wanted to go into it with a total beginner's mind and like, just presence and openness to what my experience was supposed to be.
And that really, like, that can really go either way. Like, I think because, I mean, what you are really saying to me in your words is your deep, deep, deep sense of self. And so in your aloneness, you found your freedom in your birth. And there's such, like, unshakable sense of self. When you have that, why would you need to see another birth video? Like, that's someone else's birth video.
Exactly.
Whereas I think when we're trying to understand birth from the outside in, I'm just honoring that space in you that really dove deep into your own sense of safety and your own sense of relationship and friendship within yourself, that this was so liberating to be so in your own space.
Yeah. And I love how you worded that, the whole inside out thing versus the outside in. And for me, that was, hugely important, was to have this journey be from the inside out, to go into my own being and learn what it means to become a mother. And at the same time, along that journey, for a lot of people, it is an important piece to be exposed to the stories, like through this podcast and through videos. And I did have that experience with just hearing about those two women down in Ojai who had the free births. That was enough for me to at least know, like, okay, this is possible. Now I know someone else has done it. And now I can go within myself and learn how to feel present enough and in tune enough with my own body and experience. So I was there, fully present with my body and what was happening, and started seeing his head coming out. And then I realized my amniotic sac had never broken. My water had never broken. And I had read a story a few days prior in this book. I think it's called Unhindered Childbirth, which maybe you're familiar with. And I like that word, unhindered, where she had this happen. Her water had never broken, and she felt like an impulse to break it herself with her fingernails. And something in me was like, yes, I want to do that. So I just kind of, spontaneously and instinctually reached in with my fingernails and just kind of like pinched it and broke the sac. And as all the fluids gushed out, my son Zion basically gushed out with the fluids. It was awesome. His head like shot out, and then I kind of I was squatting. I'm in the position right now as if you could see me, but I was like kind of showing you. I was squatting, and I put an arm behind me, and his body shot out, just spiraled out, like flew with this force of creation and life into his dad's hands. His dad caught him. And yeah, it was like, oh my God, there was a baby in there, this feeling of like, wait, this actually just happened. And, yeah. And then he lifted him up to me, and I received him from him and held him up to my chest and was just like kissing him and smelling him, rubbing my face on him. And then Avalon, the dog, the wolf, the midwolf, comes over. I mean, she's by my side throughout the whole thing. She was like, she wouldn't even go outside to pee. She was super present. She comes over and starts licking his back and licking my legs because there's a little bit of blood. I thought it was a lot of blood, just because I didn't really know what a lot of blood was. Not to the point where I was concerned that I was like losing too much, but there was blood down my legs and all over my son Zion. And
yeah, birth is bloody.
Yeah, exactly. So I wasn't worried about it, but there was enough where Avalon, my wolf dog, was stoked. So she was like, oh my God, colostrum, now blood. I have the best life ever. So she was licking my legs, and then Zion, my son, he didn't like cry or, he was very calm to the point where I was almost a little bit concerned. Like, is he supposed to do something? He's just so peaceful. And it seemed like he was struggling to breathe a little bit, and Avalon started licking his back very vigorously, and he coughed up some amniotic fluid when she licked his back. And, and then there was this sigh of relief, like, okay, he's good. He's breathing. Mm-hmm. He cried a little bit. He was moving a little bit. And so, yeah, then he basically latched right on to my left breast, and that inspired more contractions. Mm-hmm. So then shortly thereafter, I was squatting at the altar where I had envisioned birthing him from the start, and on my sheepskin, which still has the blood stains, squatting, holding him in one arm while like kind of balancing on my partner and birthing the placenta, which was very effortless. It just kind of plopped right out after a baby. It's like, really simple. So the placenta came out.
Sorry, yeah, I was going to ask what you did with it.
Yeah, so we had a lotus birth, meaning we did not cut the cord, the umbilical cord. I had read a book called Placenta, the Forgotten Chakra, just a couple months before giving birth, and learned about, lotus birth and what that even is, the benefits to it, how to do it. And I had initially desired to either encapsulate the placenta that was what I had initially wanted to do, but we weren't able to get a dehydrator up to the land, and we were off grid, so it didn't seem like that was going to happen. So we salted the placenta and put rosemary and lavender on it, wrapped it in an organic cotton cloth, and kept it in a little bowl next to me. And I was like, okay, I had my plan. I was going to allow the cord to remain connected for a few days, and then burn through it with like a cord burning ritual that I had read about, and then ingest my own placenta, eat it. So that's what I did. So for the first 3 days, basically after that happened, we put the placenta in a bowl next to me and just got back into bed. It was like so simple. There was nothing that had to be done. I didn't like weigh him or do any kind of like tests. I just looked at him, was like, yep, he's perfect. Let's snuggle. And it was 2 a.m. when he was born. So we still had, several hours of darkness. We just got into bed and snuggled, and I just stared at him, and I was wide awake. There was no chance of going to sleep after that. I had so much energy. And that was a big paradigm shift for me to realize, because what I had seen in movies was like after birth, the mother is like struggling and ruined and, drugged and exhausted. And I was like ready to do anything. I was like, I could give birth again right now. I can start a business. Like what do I want to do? I can do it.
Yeah. I remember it too. It's very creative energy. Like I remember the night after I birthed, laying in bed, feeling like I was on ayahuasca, having these like rolling waves of orgasmic, sexual, creative energy, having all these epiphanies and crying from ecstasy. And I was like, okay, I have never heard anybody talk about this before.
Yep. Yeah. And I love that you specifically just mentioned ayahuasca, because that's one of the plant medicines that I am very connected with. And that's how my partner and I met, was in an ayahuasca ceremony. And that's something that I share with people who ask about my birthing experience, is that in those moments that I described earlier, right before he was born, when everything was still and present and quiet, I experienced such profound visions of like merging realms, the realms merging, and like just infinite support of all of creation there with me, and all the women who had ever birthed, and just like having my back and reminding me that everything was perfect. And it almost felt like I went into, the unseen realms and like retrieved the soul of my son, and then brought both of us back together. So it was a very shamanic, like psychedelic experience. And I've thought about how working with plant medicines for years before becoming pregnant and giving birth, I feel was really supportive in terms of helping me learn how to navigate those realms, knowing how to like remain centered and present, even when things are challenging, or there's a vision that I don't understand, or that feels overwhelming, or my body's uncomfortable. So yeah, that's been very supportive on my path.
Yeah, I completely agree. There was a real weird part of my birth, very late in the game, where every time I went into the bathroom and did this certain position leaning into my bathtub, I would feel the presence of a male, old masculine shaman feeling, and it did not feel loving. And it was fine. I wasn't ever scared, and I never felt unsafe because I have so much experience traveling. And so I would feel this confusing. It was like he was trying to confuse me. It was really trippy. And every time I would go into the bathtub, I would do this weird thing where I would forget who was in labor. And,
oh my goodness.
Yeah. And it was like he was fucking with me. And then I would move away from that position, and I would be like, no, these are mine. These are my contractions. I'm in labor. And then but it was, for some reason, I kept going back into this position, hanging into the bathtub. And I would feel this energy being like, those aren't yours. You're not in labor. And I was like, okay, I'm in the underworld, and that's okay. I have been here before.
Yeah. And that's one of the things I feel is most important in terms of preparing to give birth in whatever way, is learning, okay, what are the tools that are available to me so that I can come back to my center and my sovereignty no matter what arises. Like if there's a physical discomfort or a weird energy that's present, like what are the things I can do to come back to my center and my sovereignty? So that's something I've become really passionate about exploring. Like, what are the things that helped me? How can I support other women in developing their own like set of tools that can be available to them? Because it's important how to know how to reclaim that power in that space, especially while giving birth.
Yeah. And I mean, that's really what it comes down to, is you cannot prepare for every what if. You cannot, it's like a totally different paradigm to be like, wait, I actually don't have to prepare for every what if. I can choose to rely on my resources and on, my intuition, and I can rely on that. And no matter what happens, we will first be centering around my own intuition and my own autonomy, and moving from that space, which, once you really lock that in, all of those what ifs are they just don't have the charge, because any one of those what ifs that happen, you're going to be able to handle it. Because what does it even mean to not be able to handle it? It's like, of course you're going to be able to handle it.
Right. Exactly.
And it's really like letting go of control, or the idea of control.
Yeah, it's a combination of surrendering and releasing the control, and stepping up and doing the work to cultivate our own intuition and to be present with ourselves and the land, and whatever it is that for each woman feels supportive of us returning to our inner knowing and that place of power. So then we snuggled in bed and until the sun came up, and the next morning just was like, kind of just present with it all. And
he's like, we have a baby now.
Yeah. Like, okay, yeah, that's all. And nobody knew. So then my partner went out into the snow with our satellite phone and had to like walk across the property to find service, and called the first people was my grandparents. We had promised them that they would be the first to find out.
That's cute.
So my grandfather answered the phone, and my partner told him, your great grandson was born. And it was so special. So then, so for the next few days, we remained connected, just nursing, like snuggling naked. And then on the third night, the cord was totally dried and like black and, kind of shriveled. There was clearly nothing still pumping from the placenta into the baby. So we got 2 long candles and we burned through the cord. And then the placenta was still totally good because I had salted it heavily and put herbs on it and was keeping a clean organic cotton cloth on it. So then I ate it. I cooked it on our fire in some coconut oil with vegetables and put it in a sprouted corn tortilla and had tacos.
That's awesome. So it was what, like 12 hours old or something?
Well, it was the third day.
Oh, so you ate it the third day.
Yeah, the third day. And what was really cool about that is that it happened simultaneous to my milk coming in. So right when I started feeling like really a bit emotionally all over the place and really vulnerable and alone and tired and it caught up to me like, whoa, I just gave birth and, exerted a lot of energy and don't have a tribe around me right now to support me. Like, holy shit, I'm really tired and this is hard. Yeah. Then I ate the placenta and all of a sudden was like, zoom, new power arose from within. And I just felt so energized and clear and stable and strong. So that was awesome, ingesting the placenta right as my milk came in. And the tougher parts, you eat the fine parts, like with meat, which I hadn't eaten meat for several years. So that was really, it felt so good in my body. I have some friends who are vegan who ask me about that. Like, whoa, you were vegan and you ate your placenta. And one of the things I say is that the placenta is the only meat that comes from life, not death. And I just think that's so beautiful.
And it's your own. I mean,
yeah, exactly.
It's very different.
It's made for me. Oh yeah, totally different. It was amazing. So the tougher parts I gave to Avalon, again, the midwolf, and she was stoked. She didn't leave my side for like a week and a half.
Hell no. She was like, I'm going to get that placenta. Oh
yeah. We were bonded, and my partner literally had to carry her outside to force her to pee because she didn't want to leave my side.
I bet. They're very intuitive.
Yeah. They are. Yeah. So,
she totally was your midwolf.
She was.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I know people listening are going to think, whoa, that's kind of crazy that you ate the organ on the third day, because in like the typical placenta medicine rhetoric, it's like it cannot be left out. It cannot be consumed, for that long. And you are obviously an example of where that is not true, because it was, and it vitalized you. And
yeah, based on the research I did, if you salt it heavily, or you can ice it, but I didn't want to ice it while it was connected to him because I didn't want like cold, coldness near the baby, but salting it to preserve it, works. So
how dried up was it?
It wasn't dry. It was still like very spongy. It was, I don't know. I'm definitely not an expert in the placenta world. So I'd be curious to talk with people who know more about that. But my intuition was like, yes, this is good to eat right now. It looked great. It wasn't like there was nothing weird about it.
Well, and I mean, most people who do placenta medicine are not therefore well-versed in 3-day-old salted, you know what I mean? So like you actually are an expert in what you chose to do.
Yeah, in my own experience, I just tuned into what felt right to me. And that's the encouragement that I just give to all women, is like, tune into what feels good to you. And that's the path to reclaiming our sovereignty, is being present enough to listen to what really feels right and healthy and safe to us. Because it can be really limiting to overly research or like overly analyze or talk to too many people.
Especially, I mean, that's such a good example with the placenta that I guarantee if you asked a bunch of people what they thought, you wouldn't get, well, if you had asked me, I would have been like, do whatever you want. But most people would have said, absolutely not. You have to treat it like meat. It could get bacteria, it'll make you sick. So, I mean, there is a huge cost whenever we ask someone's opinion, and whenever we ask Google or a Facebook group, we have to be kind of checking ourselves of, am I asking this question because I need validation, or am I asking this question out of a sense of wanting to give my authority away and I'll just do whatever anyone else says, or am I asking this in a space of solid curiosity and I still trust that I'm going to make my own decision? because otherwise, oh my gosh, so overwhelming.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the practices that has been so helpful for me, and this started in my pregnancy and now continues in the journey of motherhood. Now my son is 2.5. And every day there are situations that I'm like, okay, do I ask someone else for advice on how to handle this? Or like, what do I feel? And so the practice that really helps me is coming back to the somatic wisdom, tuning into our bodily response to things. Like, how does this feel? And, right when whether it's a person or a situation or an option, like thinking of it and feeling it in our body. Do I tense up and, contract, or do I relax? And does that feel good? So coming back to the somatic bodily wisdom, and trusting in that, and then cultivating a relationship with it. The more we learn how to listen, because it takes practice. We've been so programmed and conditioned to turn to everywhere else but within, that it takes practice to remember how to be present with the wisdom that's within. So that's a good starting place, I feel, is like, just notice, how do you feel when that option is presented to you?
Totally.
And then, and the more we learn how to listen and respond like correctly, the easier it becomes.
And there's nowhere you shouldn't apply that. Like, how do you feel when you've shared your birthing vision with someone in your family? I've been really tuning in lately, because I've been unfortunately having to spend a lot of time on social media building these wonderful groups, but it's way more than what my energy wants to be putting into. And so I have noticed that when I overextend my time on social media, all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I have a sick feeling in my stomach. Like, I actually feel a little bit ill. And, of course that's like, okay, red alert, and, shut it down, go outside, go on go find a forest. But I've been really tuning into that, because it's subtle, but the more I've noticed it, I'm like, oh wow, I really can't do more than like an hour max before I start to feel a little, sick. And so, there's just such a good reminder. There's nowhere that you can't apply it, with people or products or food or decisions.
Exactly.
I mean, everything. It's like, how does it feel inside of you? And the more we can listen to that, the more we can literally train ourselves to compass towards feeling good. And that's, it reminds me of like my lifelong mantra that I'm super committed to, is whenever I am trying to figure out an answer to something, I always just say, well, does it feel good? Does it feel good?
Yeah, it's so simple that it can be overlooked.
Right, totally.
And it does require a pause. And that's something that, modern society has designed things in a way that we don't have time to pause and tune in to how something feels. So that's another aspect of like reclaiming our sovereignty, is I'm going to take a moment to pause and notice how this feels to me before I just like rush and make a decision or like, proceed. So, and
then this ties into boundaries, being willing. We're so socialized to, especially as women, to be expected to give all information away immediately. So if someone's like, when are you due, or where are you birthing, or did you vaccinate, or did you circumcise? Like, you don't fucking answer any of that shit.
Right.
You're allowed to say, I don't want to talk about it. You can just say, I don't want to talk about it. And that is like really radical, like imagine even when, even like anyone listening, like feel how that feels inside of you, to imagine saying to somebody, I don't want to talk about it. For me, it's like, I'm being rude. I'm going to offend them. It's going to be uncomfortable. Blah, 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 blah. I can feel this stuff come up that is not necessarily true. I've just been socialized to believe that I'm not supposed to have boundaries, right? And whether it's with family or strangers at the grocery store. And it's anyway, so it just totally goes back to that somatic experience and how deep it runs.
Yeah, and pregnancy is the perfect time to begin practicing setting those boundaries, because if people are coming at us during pregnancy with concerns, certainly when we're, mothering later down the line, it's going to continue. So I was just talking with a woman who I'm working with right now and helping her to prepare for a free birth later this year. We were talking about this because she's having projections from her family right now. And I told her, you totally have the power to say, the birth professionals that I'm working with have advised me to not talk about this with you and to not defend what I'm doing and to not explain. You can do your own research, but I have a limited amount of energy right now, and it needs to go toward growing my baby and taking care of myself. And that's it.
Yeah.
So
it really is. And it really can be that simple. And you don't owe anything to anyone.
Right.
Except, maybe to have some darn boundaries while you're pregnant because of your poor baby, and really
exactly.
I would argue to start these boundary settings way before you're pregnant.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So that then it's not this massive learning curve
Yeah.
we already know, right? Like we have a society that feels entitled to pregnant women, already to women, and then even more so in pregnancy. And so, yeah, boundaries are huge. And just bringing it back to what you said, feeling what it feels like to push. Because here's the thing, we all have boundaries. We're just not honoring them. And so you can feel in the grocery store when someone asks you a personal question and then you give away your information, or it's online or it's to your mom or whatever, you can feel, if you take a second and do that pause that you're talking about and tune into your system, you can feel where your boundaries are and you can feel yourself extending them. And so what could it be like to take that pause and then say, you know what? I've decided not to talk about this. Thank you so much for your curiosity, and we'll talk about it later, It's so powerful.
Yes. And we rewire our brain, like literally our neurological pathways as we practice taking that pause. It becomes more natural. Like when anything's asked of us, we can take a pause and feel it and listen and tune in and then decide how to respond, or if we even want to.
Sovereignty.
Yes.
I'm going to get it tattooed on my forehead. Well, I love your story. It's so good. It's so juicy and rich and just it's truly a wild birth and so perfect in its simplicity. And I could totally picture it the whole time. And just a total treat to have you on today.
Thank you so much. Yeah, like I said at the beginning, I'm just so honored to be here with you and to be sharing with all the people listening. I think it's so important to normalize all of this and to offer stories that are different than what the masses and the media are sharing with us, so that women know, like, yes, we are allowed to reclaim our sovereignty, and there's information that can support us in that. There are other women that we can reach out to. Like, for everyone listening, I'm available. I'm on social media. I have a website. You can totally reach out to me for just extra, like whether it's validation or support or information, resources, because it's very helpful. Yes, we have that innate wisdom and knowing in every situation we have what we need within. And there are moments throughout our lives where things can feel confusing or unclear. And it's really helpful to know that there are resources and people who are making it their lives work to support us in reconnecting with our innate wisdom and with our primal instincts.
Beautiful. Well, you are a blessing to this planet. Thank you for sharing, and I love your story. And I will link when I post the episode. I'll have a link to your amazing Instagram of your beautiful wildlife.
Thank you so much. You are a blessing to this world as well, and I'm just so glad to be connecting with you.
Yeah, me too. Long overdue.
Yeah.
All right, girlfriend. Take care.
Thank you. You too.
That's it for today, everyone. Join us next week for another episode of the Freebirth podcast. Thanks for joining us, and remember, your body, your choice. Lots of love.